Welcome to the Real View podcast, where Ohio Realtors connect you to innovators and influencers, keeping you with the real view of real estate. Whether you're a broker, agent, first-time homebuyer, industry leader, or just happen to stumble upon our podcast today, you can expect to hear tips, tools, tricks, interesting information, and so much more from the experts in Ohio's real estate game. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Real View podcast. I'm your host, Allison Wiley. With us today for today's episode is our special guest, the Ohio Realtors 2022 President, John Mangas. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, excited to be here. Thank you so much, Allison. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you on. You are no stranger to the Ohio Realtors world by any means, but this is your first time on the podcast. So we're really excited to talk about you, about what your plans are for the new year as president. I know you have a lot of great things in store for us, and we're going to get to hear about all of that. But before we get started, I have to ask our signature question, which we ask all of our guests on the podcast, which is, what is the best view that you've ever seen?
Wow. That one prompts a little introspection, doesn't it? I mean, that's probably why you asked the question.
Yeah.
For me, that kind of elicits like, what's your happy place or that kind of thing. So for me, after a hard week or a crazy busy week, especially in the peak of the season, I kind of think about one of my happy places, which is kind of making my way over to Catawba Island, over to the Catawba Island Club. There's this great little second floor place called the Burgee Bar that looks out over Lake Erie. And by Friday night, I'm usually ready to chill out a little bit, grab a nice glass of something, listen to the live music, and watch the sunset over Lake Erie. In fact, for those of you that follow me on social, you probably are tired of my sunset pics on Insta or Facebook because some of those sunsets, they're just too pretty not to take a picture of, Allison.
No, I think so too. That's the funny thing that you said. Are you sick of seeing a sunset? I am never sick of seeing a sunset. Like, I am such a sucker for a sunset. So send me all the sunset pictures. I would love to hear it. I love visiting Lake Erie. Love going up there. A group of friends and I make a trip to Put-in-Bay once a year to spend the weekend up there. Always a blast. It's so beautiful, and it makes you feel like you're almost not even in Ohio, which is like really cool when you talk about escaping and getting away from the work week. Going up there kind of makes you forget, that you're even in this state, which is very cool, very, very nice. And you also have a boat, right? Because one of the auction, RPAC auction, I think you offered someone to come with you on your boat, right?
Yeah, for the RPAC auction last year, 2021, I put up a kind of just an Erie Islands weekend, which really can be whatever they want it to be, ride out on the boat, trip over to Kelly's Island or Put-in-Bay, hang out at Catawba, whatever. And sometimes, those are weather dependent as well, but there's never a bad day when you're on the islands. It's just always a great time. And really, that's a piece of Ohio, to your point, that a lot of people don't even recognize. I'm always amazed, when I started working with Dotloop, based in Cincinnati, I was shocked at what a large percentage of the people at Dotloop didn't know anything about Erie Islands, didn't know that Kelly's Island or Put-in-Bay or Middle Bass, even existed. So, what a great treasure those are.
It absolutely is. Definitely get up there if you haven't had a chance to yet. So much fun and in beautiful, beautiful place. Okay, well, thanks for answering the question. Thanks for playing along with the game. Love the little chat there. I want to hear about you, John. How did you get started in real estate? I know you've been in this industry for many, many, many years. Did you always know that you wanted to get into real estate, or tell us a little bit about what's gotten you to where you are today?
It's so interesting. I think if you ask that question to 100 realtors, I think probably 99% of them would say it wasn't on my radar until somebody tapped on my shoulder. And I would say the same thing. I grew up on a family farm in Henry County, Ohio, roughly 20 miles south of Napoleon, if any of you know where that is. And I graduated from high school, went to Patrick Henry, if that sounds familiar to anyone. And I moved to Toledo to go to college. And I quickly realized that without income, college becomes very expensive. So I was working a couple part-time jobs, taking some day classes, taking some night classes. And I had the same professor a couple semesters in a row. And he kept me after class one night, Allison. And, after seeing some of your casework and whatnot, you'd make a really good realtor. He said, you do very well with problem solving. You can take the classes here at the University of Toledo as electives toward your degree. It's kind of a way to double dip the system. I was like, okay, at that point in your life, an authority figure pulls you aside and makes a recommendation, you're probably the same way, Allison, but you kind of listen to it, right?
Yeah.
So what I later found out, he was a commercial realtor that had been a professor before he sold real estate. And, he kept teaching a few classes, just to stay connected to that. But, he pulled me out of class, kept me after, suggested I take the classes, which I did, got my real estate license, my sales license at 19, stayed in school for a while because I think I was on the maybe 5 or 6 year program. And then at 24, I had sold enough real estate to qualify. So I took the additional classes and got my broker's license.
Wow. So you became a broker at that young, at 24?
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy,
that's awesome.
what were they thinking, right?
Well, clearly they were thinking that, something good, because now look at the impact that you've had and your success. So very cool. I love hearing stories. And you're right. Not a lot of people say, this is always something I knew how to do. And I think it's just shows the importance of, having good people in your life that see something in you that want to encourage you to go down a certain path.
That's really a great point, Allison, and this may not tie into where you exactly want to go. We, as a community of realtors, we always need to be looking for like that next generation of professionals to follow in our tracks. And I think that's just something we can all be more vigilant of.
Absolutely. Always something to keep at top of the mind. How are we going to bring that next generation along to sustain this industry? Because, we're not going to be around forever. And it's good to have people ready to step in and take over if needed. And I know, too, one of the things that you're super passionate about and do a ton of great work with is your charity work. You're super involved with a ton of different organizations, always giving back. Tell us a little bit about that. Is that something that is really important to you? And tell us about your work with different charities.
Sure. So I'm going to go like way back, okay?
Yeah.
I mentioned that I grew up on a farm. My father was actually a quadriplegic, and that presented a whole host of challenges, especially, in the 70s. Our society wasn't quite as accommodating to people with disabilities as we are today. And yet, my parents both very much, they were, greatest generation people, and they both very much instilled in my siblings and I that philosophy that when asked to do something, you say yes, and you give back where you can. They lived pretty modestly. They didn't have a lot of resources at times, but they always found a way to give back and be part of the community that they were living in. So, I've just really projected their will forward. Chairing the United Way fundraiser a few years ago for a couple of years was certainly something I enjoyed. For the last 20 years, we've been doing a fundraiser tied to a Cinco de Mayo theme, which is code for a lot of fun.
Yes.
And with that, we've been able to raise a good amount of money for the local chapters of the Children's Miracle Network and the local chapter of Komen for the Cure. And, again, I think keeping those dollars that are raised locally, here local in our community, and we've earmarked them to be, reinvested locally and not sent off to the, home office kind of thing. That's really important to us. Great people to help me with that. My business partner, Kathy, and such a great committee here that's helped us put on, those events for the last 20 years. And we're just short of $500,000 that we've raised for CMN and Komen, and super proud of that.
That's incredible.
It's really kind of a passion. And by the way, I'm digressing a smidge, but, if anybody that's listening ever has a chance to reach out to the Children's Hospital in whatever community you're in and take a tour, those folks love to walk you through. And I'm telling you, once you see what goes on inside of a children's hospital, you just can't help but open your heart, Allison.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's incredible. And I think it just goes to show the testimony that Ohio Realtors care and Realtors give back. And, you are such an embodiment of that, and the fact that you've been able to give so much back to your community. And I love that you said you keep it local. I think that's really cool. We live and work in these communities. We sell homes. We encourage people to live here. And, the fact that you're able to give back to your specific community where you're living, I think is really special. And we know Realtors are great at that.
Realtors are such giving people. I mean, Realtors just have giving hearts. I'm going to digress for just one more second, but CMN, Children's Miracle Network, reached out to us maybe 5 or 6 years ago and said, hey, we're doing a renovation at the hospital. We want to have a place for the siblings of the kids who are here, who are sick. Can you help us, create a space, with movies and videos and games and like a fun space for the siblings that's safe. So if the parents are down the hall in a room, the siblings can somewhat monitored, but somewhat safe on their own. And that was so much fun because it was just a neat project to get behind and raise some extra cash for.
That's awesome. This episode of The Real View is brought to you by the Ohio Association of Community Colleges. Ohio's network of community colleges provides accessible training that accommodates the busy lifestyles of aspiring real estate professionals at half the price of a traditional university. With convenient locations in every part of the state, as well as online options, Ohio's community colleges are your smart choice for pre-licensing education. For more details or to start the journey to a real estate career, visit the education page at ohiorealtors.org and then click on the pre-license course locations. If people are interested about learning more or giving back, can they reach out to you if they
absolutely.
Want?
Yeah, CMN is such a cool organization. And let's face it, there's just nothing worse in life than a sick child.
Oh, no.
There just isn't.
No kid deserves to be going through. Kids deserve to be playing around and having fun and not with any cares in the world.
Absolutely. And especially in the real estate community, we see it. But, not everybody has access to quality health care. And, some of the extras that kids need just aren't available in some circumstances. So, being that little bit of a stopgap, it's just kind of a cool thing.
No, it's super cool. I love, you can see how passionate you are about it when you talk. So thank you for sharing that with us. It's hard to digress from, man, I should have closed with that because that was like super cool. You want to sit with that. It's very, very touching. Feel it in the heart for sure. Tell us a little bit about your path to leadership. You are going to be the president at Ohio Realtors in 2022, but you have been doing so much for your local associations, for our state association. I mean, you've just done it all and have been involved on so many different levels of leadership before now you take the reins this year as president. So tell us how you got started and what made you want to get involved in leadership.
I don't know that it was ever a super conscious decision. Like a lot of things in life, the more you get involved, the more you want to get involved. And one thing sort of leads to another. I know with our local association, getting involved with our Norris MLS was sort of, my first step into that. From there, I got involved with the board of directors on the local association side and, chaired some committees. Just think it's a fun thing. But during the recession, everybody had budgetary issues, right? And yet we wanted to put on a first class RPAC event. And myself and our RPAC decided that we were going to look around our industry and see if we could put together an RPAC band. So we found a drummer that was a realtor. We found a bass player. We found a guitar player. We found a couple vocalists. We found Johnny O, an accordion player from a polka band. And we put together this band. They came up with a set list, Allison. And we were outside on the river in downtown Toledo and put on just an amazing RPAC event in the middle of the recession when things just weren't very happy in our industry. And it wasn't a record fundraising event by any means. It was still a big dollar raised and everybody had fun that lightened the spirit. But that event showed me as much as anything, just how a little bit of creativity can really translate to elevating our members, elevating our industry. We have, local elected officials there. I mean, everybody had such a great time, Allison. And it was just kind of a game changer in the middle of a not fun time of our industry.
I love that. Sounds so fun. What a cool idea to find, realtors who are, different types of band players and drummers and singers and musicians. That is so fun.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
In retrospect, why we didn't video that, I have no idea. It would be so fun to have on a shelf and pull out. But anyway, through that, I've gotten more and more and more involved and became a state director and got involved in some of the committees at Ohio Realtors or then Ohio Association of Realtors and chaired some committees. And I'm going to digress to the convention in Cleveland. And we were at the Hilton Rooftop Bar and Greg Rabchak pulled me aside and said, you really need to go through the chairs and be our someday president. And I'm like, there's so many talented people. I'm just one of then 33,000, now 37,000 members. And next thing you know, he waved in Sarah Kalo and Bob Miller and Chris Hall. and I sort of got quadruple teamed, Allison. And back to my parents, when asked, say yes. And so I said yes. And I think Sarah might have been president because we were in Cleveland that year. And of course, there have been great leadership in between now and then. Seth in 2021 has just been awesome to work with. And so I feel very privileged to have had the opportunity to serve, give back, and be part of such a great organization.
Yeah, no, you really are. And it's always a joy whenever, we interact with you. And I loved having chats with you. And we spent some time together in San Diego at the NAR convention, which was awesome. And you just bring such a positive approach. And,
thank you.
Your energy is so refreshing. And you're just always a joy to talk to. You're always in a great mood, whether, that's the case always or not, but you always are a joy to talk to. So I appreciate your energy and your positive approach. And you always bring a little sunshine to whatever you're doing. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah.
I truly love what I do. I mean, this industry is such an amazing place to plant roots and put down a career. This is almost one of the last vestiges of entrepreneurship there is.
Yeah.
We don't have to buy inventory. We don't have to pay tax on inventory. We just have to be really good at communicating and taking care of our clients, and maybe need to do a little better job of taking care of ourselves. I sometimes see stress on people's faces when they're doing transactions, and a little self-care is important too. And I think sometimes we forget that part of the message, Allison.
Absolutely. I think that's something we can all do better on is taking care of ourselves. And, we are job number one. At the end of the day, if we are not good on the inside and out, then how are we going to be good, doing everything else that we have to do? But you have some pretty cool initiatives planned for us for 2022. I know there's kind of 3 things that you've narrowed in on that you're really going to make a focus into your presidency. Yeah. Tell us what those are.
Sure. And I'll try and be succinct, which is sometimes hard for me.
Hey, we're on a podcast. We're here to talk. So it's all good.
Fair enough. To Scott Williams' credit, CEO Scott, probably early in 2021, he reached out to me and said, I want to talk to you about your initiatives for 2022. I want to start thinking and processing and getting familiar with what your initiatives are going to be now so that, any groundwork that needs to be done, we can begin in advance of, which I so appreciate that approach. Mm-hmm. 1 year goes by so fast, Allison. Mm-hmm. Like hypothetically, to drop some initiatives on staff the middle of January and expect something positive to come from them in a 12-month time frame is pretty unrealistic. Mm-hmm. So Scott reached out, like I said, in early 2021, and I said finding a healthcare solution for our members was the number one thing on my list. And he jumped on that. And while we're still working on finding a solution, and staff have come a long way in evaluating other options that are out there, looking for healthcare solutions for 1099 independent contractors that make sense. While we don't have an announcement, I can tell you that is certainly top of the list. It's underway. Scott and staff are diligently working on finding a solution for our members that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I'm just so excited about that one. I mean, good health insurance is priceless almost.
It is. And, I think if we've learned anything through this pandemic, it's that you're right. The ability to know that you're safe if, we are in a national pandemic, global pandemic, or, if anything was to happen, you want to be protected, you want to be safe and secure. And I know that, speaking as a staff person, that this is something, we're passionate about bringing to you all as well. And we really hope that we're able to find a solution. And like you said, I know we're working super hard on trying to figure out something that works, and having that option available, I think, is critical,
I think Scott and staff have been working on the healthcare solution for a number of months, and it doesn't just happen overnight. Mm-hmm. For those of you that are listening that aren't aware of this, I mean, finding a healthcare platform for independent contractors, because let's face it, all of us are, our own little businesses. We're not, part of a large corporation. While we are part of a large association and the largest trade association in the country, we're independent contractors, and that creates a special set of problems for health insurance, which is regulated on a state-by-state basis. So enough of that one. We're working on it. Hopefully we'll have something exciting to tell our members in the relatively near future, Allison.
Yes, absolutely.
So the second one, I know you and I have talked a little bit off show about this next one. Yeah. So I'm going to just kind of throw it out there, and then I'll let you ask me where you want. I'll let you tell me where you want me to go with it.
Yeah.
But I'd like to sort of lift the hood on dual agency, and I'd like to put together a working group or a PAG or a presidential advisory group that actually can take a look at dual agency and kind of look at it and say, are the consumers' needs being well met? Are members understanding it and using that agency option in the best possible way they can? I feel like with the market we're in, particularly with the seller's market we're in, and we have escalation clauses and earnest money being held by non-realtor entities, there's just a lot of changes that have happened in our marketplace. And I want to make sure that dual agency is being practiced properly and that dual agency is really appropriate in the way it's formed right now in Ohio. There are states that have actually outlawed dual agency. And I'm not advocating that, by the way. I just want to be clear on that. I'm not advocating that. I just want to lift the hood and look at it.
Absolutely. And for those of our listeners who may not know what that is, could you share with us?
Think of it this way. If you're a licensee and you have a listing, you are representing that seller. If you are working with a buyer and you have established a working relationship with that buyer and declared yourself a buyer's agent, and you are now taking that buyer to that listing, you are a dual agent, which means you have the same equal fiduciary duty to the buyer that you do the seller and the same to the seller that you do the buyer. So when all of these things happen in the course of a transaction, whether it's inspection issues, whether it's a low appraisal, multiple offers, appraisal gaps, the list goes on, it becomes very, very challenging to be completely neutral and not advocate for either party. And yet that's really the letter of the law that we're charged with. So disclosure, there's just so many pieces of it. And again, I'm not advocating that we get rid of dual agency. I would just like to look at it and see if it needs to be revised, modernized, or if we just need to do more training on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great spotlight, and it deserves to take a look at. No harm can come from taking a look at something, if we feel that, it's that time again, or it hasn't been, really a focus for a few years. I think it's great that we're going to take a look at that, and we'll see, what we find, and it'll be a great initiative for us to work on.
For sure.
And you have one more for us, I believe, right?
Yeah. My third one is a little bit different insofar as it's sort of an emerging piece of our industry. But, if we look back pre-recession, there really weren't very many teams functioning and operating in Ohio. Maybe in other parts of the country there were because, Ohio was a little bit slow to catch up on teams. But now we see teams as one of the fastest growing segments of our realtor population. So I would like to create, a working group or a PAG that looks at teams and says, from an award standpoint, do we need to look at teams and have, small team, medium team, large team awards? Do we need to look at team leaders and say, do they need to be a management level licensee? Because in many respects, Allison, they're a brokerage within a brokerage. There's just a lot of things that go into operating a team that we haven't really talked about for a while or maybe ever. So even dual agency, how is dual agency practiced within the team setting? And does that need to be sort of evaluated? So looking at teams, awards, structure, training, education. I know that our ODRE has said that they want, teams to be brought forward and named, appropriately. However, some teams are grandfathered in if they were prior to July 1st. So there's going to be some changes that maybe we need to make our members more aware of that maybe they aren't currently aware of. I don't know. I just want to look at that in a little more detail and maybe get some clarification around it.
Absolutely. And, like you mentioned, it's so spot on. It's so relevant, so timely as to what's going on now. Because I believe the last time we had Peg and Lori on, our attorneys at Ohio Realtors, they discussed some of those changes that you mentioned with teams and how they're named and all that stuff. So makes total sense that we would take the opportunity to take a look at that and see what can come out of it and see if there's stuff that needs to be revised. And like you said, bring more awareness around it. So very, very cool. And I know we are just a few weeks away from your inauguration at our winter conference at the Easton Hotel in Columbus. Are you looking forward to that night? And what are we going to expect for your big night?
Well, I guess it makes me uncomfortable when you say about my big night, because I don't think it's about me. It's about our association. It's about our industry. It's about, putting a spotlight on, the staff and all the amazing things that we're doing. Like even just this week, the first time home buyers tax credit. I was going to say inching forward, but really it's more of a lunging forward.
Yeah.
I mean, we're at the 1 yard line, to use a football analogy.
Yeah.
And Beth and staff have made that happen. And that's so, so very exciting. So to answer your question, the inaugural will be on Monday, January 24th at the Easton Hilton. I think there's a cocktail hour at 6, dinner at 7, inaugural 8. And then right after that, and going a little bit retro here, Allison, but for much of the 90s at the then Ohio Association of Realtors Convention, a band out of Cincinnati called the Menus played the big ballroom night. Actually, they're a Put-in-Bay party band.
Awesome.
I don't know if you knew that or not.
No,
but
that's awesome.
Yeah, Bay for probably 20 years. But anyway, they're out of Cincinnati, so they're Ohio-based. And they're going to come and entertain us. And on a Monday night in Columbus in January, there's not a lot going on. So in talking with staff, we thought, why not bring the party to Ohio Realtors so nobody has to leave and put on a coat?
I love that. We're going to have a party. That's going to be so fun. Very cool. And then another thing that we're looking forward in 2022 is our annual convention. And I have to say, how fitting is it that it's back in Cleveland? Because when you speak about your story of leadership, that's kind of where it all started. And now we're kind of coming back there. So it's a little bit of a full circle moment. For sure. And Joe Dirk is going to be our 22 convention chair. And he was our 2020 convention chair, except we didn't have a convention. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be in Cleveland, and the venue, House of Blues, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the convention center, everybody was so cooperative and let us get out of our contracts. So we're going back to Cleveland in 2022, and we tapped Joe on the shoulder and said, since you did all this hard work in 2020 and really didn't get to execute on it, would you consider stepping back in and being our 2022 convention chair? And it's just sort of redeploying the plan. So Joe is doing that. We're going to be in downtown Cleveland, and I'm predicting warm, sunny weather and a great time in Cleveland. Hey, September in Cleveland is pretty darn nice.
It really is.
Been to a few Browns games up there, and the weather is beautiful. It never really gets too hot. You have a nice breeze coming off of Lake Erie, so it's going to be a fabulous time of year to visit there, and we're so excited. Can't wait for that, and can't wait, to hopefully have some of these COVID restrictions, of us maybe be in a better place where we can safely gather without so many things that, I'm sure we are all getting to be done with at this point,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it'll be exciting.
All ready to move on.
We are. Well, John, we are so excited for your year. This is going to be so great. So much to look forward to. I can't wait to see what you accomplish, and it's gonna be a great year. Thank you for all that you do for our association. Thank you for your incoming year of presidency. Can't wait to get started here. So we are so excited.
Fantastic. And for any of the listeners that are interested, if you want to come and be part of the inaugural, reach out to us. We'll find a way to get you in and come be part of it. Come watch it happen.
Yeah, and you can still register for Winter Convention. It's up on our website. Go to ohiorealtors.org. The Winter Conference information will be right on there. The full schedule, full inaugural events and activities. We would love to see you there. Come hang out with us. Come enjoy some live music on a cold January night.
Perfect.
We would love to have you.
Well said, Allison. Thank you so much. It was great being with you this morning.
Thank you, John, for being here. To all of our listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you for listening to The Real View. That wraps up today's episode. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at ohiorealtors.org/therealview and on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Have questions, comments, or suggestions? We want to hear from you. Email us at podcast@ohiorealtors.org. We'll see you next time.
This has been a Humble Pod production.